So this is starting a few minutes earlier than we have rescheduled. This is the Justice for Baby Angel Geronimo campaign editions of the Khoodeelaar campaign, KHOODEELAAR, Khoodeelaar campaign. And this is the part one. This is part one of the Baby Angel, Justice for Baby Angel Geronimo campaign editions by the Khoodeelaar campaign on Saturday, the 11th of September 2021. And the newspapers, the first one is FT Weekend, that is the Financial Times Weekend edition. And what we are continuing to look for and diagnose Fleet Street so-called newspapers about is the role of this free press or freedom of the press. And this is in the context of the role played by the Fleet Street newspapers and by their broadcasting counterparts, television channels like television outlets, news outlets operated by the BBC and their counterparts on the Sky News and ITV. We said that this is the Khoodeelaar campaigns, Khoodeelaar television channel has been carrying out world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. When we say world exclusive diagnosis, we literally mean that, because there is no comparable program diagnosing either Fleet Street, British papers, or newspapers published in Britain, in the UK, or in the USA, or in Canada, or in Australia, or in New Zealand, or in that part of South Africa, which is still dominated by the Anglo-Saxon origin people supporting empire, occupying for empire. The racist attitude that dominates, the racist attitude and outlook and worldview that dominates the editorial scripts, narratives, decisions of Fleet Street and the BBC, Sky News, ITV, Channel 4, etc. This racist attitude and outlook collectively is the sickness that is defying justice, universal justice, and universal struggle for liberation from oppression everywhere. And it is evident in the fact that some of the posts that were put online during last month, let's say August, by some individuals claiming to be supporting what we call the baby angel Geronimo, were absolutely out of order and corrupt and racist and stupid and ignorant. We shall deal with all of those in the course of other kind of forthcoming editions. But what we need to notice and notify anyone viewing this is that when there was a demonstration outside the official address of the UK government department that for the last 4 years has been openly, brazenly attacking the baby angel Geronimo, located in Smith's Square in London SW1. The people who demonstrated and people who were filmed being present with various banners at that demonstration, which wasn't as big as it should have been, were not demographically representative of a diverse population. This is just a point I'm making here at this stage. This is something that will be investigated extensively at length, item by item. The fact that baby angel Geronimo did not get mentioned in that rally by a diverse population or a group of people representing the diversity of the demography of the country or indeed of the world. Justice is universal. Campaign for justice is absolutely universal. And the more diverse the composition of the people demanding justice for baby angel Geronimo, the stronger is the case by definition. And we shall look very carefully at these because there are very emotional, sentimental issues. To us, baby Geronimo is the symbol of universality. Baby angel Geronimo is the symbol of innocence, universal innocence. And baby angel Geronimo will remain forever the definitive icon, the icon of purity, integrity, and innocence against the evil plotters and conspirators and perpetrators of the plots and the conspiracies, either based in the official dungeons of DAFRA or operating from there on behalf of the actual evil force that is represented in the incumbents of Boris Johnson in the post of so-called Prime Minister in number 10 Downing Street. So, what is happening with the Fleet Street papers today is that, for example, one of the more kind of popular, widely sold papers, the Daily Mail, is running page 1 spread or splash with the Queen's second son, Andrew, being served with American court papers claiming it's a civil case and case for justice for the victim of his rape or rapes and sex assault. Whether it's a singular victim or multiple victims cannot be finally sort of determined at this stage in terms of reference, because it is quite possible that Andrew may be served with other claims, other papers later. So this one is saying that Andrew served with US sex case papers that dramatically handed over in bizarre cat and mouse game with security at Duke's Windsor home. Prince Andrew has finally been served legal papers over a civil case for rape and sexual assault. They were accepted by the security chief at his Windsor home after weeks of avoiding officials, court documents dramatically revealed. It appeared last night, however, that Andrew's lawyers claim the papers were not properly served and planned to boycott Monday's court hearing into the accusations lodged by Jeffrey Epstein victim Virginia Roberts. Now, this is a contradictory paragraph. The papers have not been served on Jeffrey Epstein, you morons. The papers have been served on Andrew. So the papers are claiming that the rapist and the sexual assaulter or assailant is Andrew, not Jeffrey Epstein. So this is the very subtle corruption, criminality, and shielding Brenda's image of Brenda's monarchy by the corrupt Daily Mail. If it was Jeffrey Epstein, what on earth were they doing serving papers at Windsor? And then the idiotic Daily Mail piece goes on. The Prince's team also hopes to get the case thrown out on a technicality. In a legal filing, his solicitor, Gary Bloxham, said, the documents Miss Roberts signed in 2009 may make her action invalid. It is the first indication of how the prince and his lawyers intend to fight the case after weeks of silence. Yesterday, a new affidavit was also lodged in New York from a London-based corporate investigator and process server, Cesar Augusto Sepulveda, who was employed to personally serve Andrew with court papers relating to the US action. The records show he records how he first went to Royal Lodge, Andrew Windsor Mansion, on August 26th and was met by Metropolitan Police officers guarding the gate who told him they could not raise anyone in charge. They said they had been instructed not to allow anyone attending there for the purpose of serving court process on the grounds of the property. And they added that no documentation would be forwarded on, leaving the server with the strong impression they had been primed. But Mr. Sepulveda returned on August 27th and was told he could now leave his papers and they would be forwarded. The serving has now been ratified under the civil procedures rules as required by the Supreme Court of England and Wales. There was no comment from the Duke of York's legal team last night. And so on. Now, this is the kind of continuation of the corrupt contradictions peddled by the Fleet Street papers, which are ambivalent and vague about the concept of universal justice. And here is the piece in the same Daily Mail by John Humphreys. And the heading is Why the Public Cannot Resist a Pinocchio Prime Minister. Gentlemen, said Groucho Marx, those are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have got others. Groucho was one of the greatest comedians of the last century, one of the wisest too. Hard not to think of him this week when Boris Johnson took his seat in the House of Commons after delivering a speech that echoed the bitter reality of Groucho's words. Nothing new there, he said. Haven't we known for donkey's years that Boris's grasp of the truth and the old-fashioned word principle is about as secure as a trapeze artist with greasy hands? His many enemies tell us that all you need to know about this scoundrel that is Boris Johnson, is that he is incorrigibly, opportunistically untrustworthy. Now that is written in a kind of jovial style by John Humphreys, and the style is part of the editorial contract. He is not to be telling the truth, and that's how they are treating Boris Johnson, because even though we have not read the rest of the piece that John Humphreys has bylined, or is bylined by John Humphreys, this is the piece that is meant to be entertainment, not meant to be ethical. And they're saying that he's talking about Disraeli, he's talking about King Canute, and so on. And before saying, it would be patronizing and wrong to paint Boris Johnson's supporters as gullible idiots. Remember, the word gullibles is a familiar word used by me in this program, in the Khoodeelaar television channel, World Diagnosis of Fleet Street. The gullibles are the majority of the Little Englanders who believe that Little England is bigger, more superior, and more substantive than the rest of the world, the rest of the planet. But this is not what Humphreys is saying. Humphreys is saying something less profound. He's saying that Boris Johnson's supporters may be gullible idiots, but they prefer him because what matters for them is results, and he's getting the results still getting the results. That's what he says. Because John Humphreys, who was painted for decades as being very rigorous and very critical and very sharp-tongued when he was a presenter on the BBC Radio 4 Today program. And the idea was that he was critical and he was kind of very intelligent in questioning politicians. That was the image of John Humphreys. But the image of John Humphreys as painted in that particular mode does not actually correspond with the reality. The reality is that in Britain, politically, there is the corruption at every level. And there is corruption at the level of the government that Boris Johnson fronts. So where do people who are the victims of injustice and corruption by this government go? Where do they go for redress? As we have been saying repeatedly and factually and evidentially, there is no redress through the courts of law, so-called. And there is no redress by democratic means. What that means is that there is no effective democratic opposition holding the incumbent government to account. In fact, the opposition is part of the collusion, as everyone, including Private Lie, has been saying for most of the time that Keir Starmer has been in post as the so-called leader of the so-called opposition. And today's Daily Mail has got a two-page spread, and it is typically corrupt Daily Mail because its headline is about how were two royals seduced by this rogue. And the rogue is named as Wayne Parker. That's his Wayne Parker. These are the double-barreled horse. And they said that he was successful in seducing the royals is supposed to be a criticism of the arrangement of the establishment. So let's say what this is about. It's about this woman or the man. Who are they talking about? Shortly after his 40th birthday, during the midlife crisis that would catapult him into the ill-fated orbit of Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew developed a curious obsession with a young opera singer. So that's the first one, not the other one. The opera singer named Summer Watson, a vivacious 22-year-old soprano on the threshold of a professional career. Miss Watson had first crossed his path at a society gathering in 2000, where she performed in a low-cut cocktail dress. Over the ensuing months, they attended a variety of events, including a sumptuous banquet at Spencer House in London's St. James's, where guests were entertained by Kiriti Kanawa, the New Zealand opera star. Despite the hefty age gap, Prince Andrew appears to have become utterly captivated by the comely blonde who had been born Rachel Watson and educated at an all-girls comprehensive school in Didcot in Oxfordshire. Soon they began discussing her struggles as a woman of limited means, trying to break into the sometimes elitist field of classical music. And it's not really about the lack of integrity, lack of accountability, lack of character, lack of morality among members of the royal family, or indeed in the UK state. This is titillation more than substantial moral investigation, just like this one by the overhyped John Humphreys. Despite the fact that John Humphreys was regularly promoted as a fierce interrogator of politicians, Humphreys never actually broke any news, if you like, by causing the ouster from power of any government minister. You remember the reference to civil servants being very or generally paranoid about any minister being embarrassed. Let's see what the exact wording is that Chris Cook in the Financial Times used. All right, so this is the piece that Chris Cook wrote, UK officials are going to great lengths to keep their secret secret. That is the piece. And in that piece, Chris Cook says, the core of the UK state is utterly paranoid about ministers being embarrassed. Now, if you look at the ministerial embarrassment, look it up, you'll find literally, immediately, as results of the search, dozens of references to Boris Johnson being paranoid, others being paranoid, Priti Patel being paranoid, or Priti Patel being treated in a particular way by Boris Johnson because of his own paranoia. So the fact that John Humphreys was for many years as the presenter, the main presenter for the BBC Radio 4 Today program, was touted, was promoted, was peddled as a fierce critic of politicians. That was the tagline. That was how he was promoted. John Humphreys is very, very critical of government ministers. And that government ministers were allegedly unwilling to appear on the program, which was fronted by John Humphreys, and they didn't want to do that because of being embarrassed by their appearance. So the Chris Cook piece in the Financial Times says, and I read again for reference, the core of the UK state is utterly paranoid about ministers being embarrassed. Now, if this is the case, and this is the opinion of Chris Cook, writing his first notebook comment, which was published in the Financial Times on the 31st of August 2021. The reference to his first means the first one, since he rejoined the Financial Times as one of their senior reporters. If this is the case, this is the norm, then this norm didn't exhibit itself via John Humphreys, because Humphreys never failed, that is to say, brought down the career of a minister. That, as far as I can recall, I mean, this is subject to fact checking. We can check the facts and update my assertion accordingly. But as I speak at this time on this program, on Saturday, the 11th of September 2021, I cannot remember any incident of the last, let's say, 20 years of any UK government minister being so embarrassed by an appearance on the BBC Radio 4 Today program presented by or hosted by John Humphreys, that the career of that minister suffered terminally and the minister had to resign or in effect was sacked. Now that is in the sphere of society outside of the limited space of a court room or a court in this country. No minister has been felled. No minister's career as a minister has been terminated by any ruling by any judge in any court of law, so-called in this country in the memorable period. Even the 1960s, early 1960s resignation of John Profumo over the highly publicized kind of sexual affair he had with Christine Keeler. Even that resignation wasn't as a result of a particular media exposure or expose. It was actually a general sense of embarrassment that actually embarrassed the Wilson, was it Harold Wilson? Government, of which John Profumo was a minister. Now, going back to Profumo, let's check what the published entry on Profumo say. What it says, that the Profumo there are entries on Profumo affair and Profumo scandal. So the Profumo affair entry is described as a scandal in 20th century British politics. John Profumo, the Secretary of State for War in Harold Macmillan's Conservative. It's Harold Macmillan. There are two Harolds as prime ministers. One is the Conservative Harold Macmillan, the other one, Harold Wilson. So it's the Harold Macmillan that we are referring to. So Profumo is said to have had an extramarital affair with 19-year-old model Christine Keeler, beginning in 1961. Profumo denied the affair in a statement to the House of Commons. But weeks later, a police investigation exposed the truth, proving that Profumo had lied to the House of Commons. The scandal severely damaged the credibility of Harold Macmillan's government, and Macmillan resigned as Prime Minister in October 1963, citing ill health. Ultimately, the fallout contributed to the Conservative government's defeat by the Labour Party in the 1964 general election. When the Profumo affair was first revealed, public interest was heightened. By reports that Keeler may have been simultaneously involved with Captain Yevgeny Ivanov, a Soviet naval attaché, thereby creating a possible national security risk. Now, nothing like that was revealed about anybody, any minister, by anything that John Humphreys actually broadcast. And the nearest appearance of scandal about a government minister or the senior official or senior part of the regime fronted by Tony Blair was Matthew Paris's Newsnight outing of Peter Mandelson's homosexual or gay lover from a South American or Latin American country. The various resignations from Theresa May's cabinet were not caused by the media, really. They were caused by a series of mainly right-wing women alleging phantom sexual kind of attacks on them by conservative ministers or conservative politicians. Again, none of these has had anything to do with the work of the media, the work of Fleet Street, and most certainly not the work of the BBC, because the BBC, even before the Brexiteering kind of domination of it by Brexiteers, had long been a lying outfit. The executive agenda of the BBC was in denial of the truth of the time, as has been confirmed by the fact that the BBC's executives suppressed evidence of Jimmy Savile's severe sexual career as a sexual abuser, and so on. So the print newspapers, the Fleet Street newspapers, have not led. In fact, they have not even played any part in reporting the abuses, sexual abuses or any other abuses by ministers. The career of the conservative minister, Reginald Maudling, was ended or terminated or brought to an end by his involvement in the corruption that featured John Paulson, a Teesside kind of local politician and entrepreneur, liberal, probably supporting the Liberal Party. So that also shows the irrelevance politically of the Labour Party in the period since the 1940s. Remember, the Labour Party first got political office after the end of the so-called Second World War, the Second European War, the Nazi war, the war against Nazis. And after the victory in the 1940s election led by the first Labour Prime Minister Clement Attlee, the Labour Party didn't win an election for years until the resignation of the Conservatives headed by Harold Macmillan, and the election of 1964 was thus significantly impacted by the resignation of the Conservative government headed by Harold Macmillan, and the resignation being, in fact, caused by the John Profumo scandal. Profumo had sexual affair with 19-year-old Christine Keeler, but Profumo lied to the House of Commons. And the fact that Profumo had lied was confirmed by the investigation carried out by the police into allegations, including the allegations that he had these sexual relations or affair with Christine Keeler. And as I have said, Christine Keeler, well, as I have said on the entries, say reading the entry in the Wikipedia entry on John Profumo. And so the Fleet Street papers have not been investigating anything. And this goes on. And the role of Fleet Street in peddling the criminally conceived and the criminal plot against baby angel Geronimo has been worse than Fleet Street just not doing any investigation. Fleet Street has been complicit for 4 years in peddling the lies of DEFRA and shielding Boris Johnson. So if you compare with the sex scandal of John Profumo and his resignation, which actually sparked and triggered the resignation of Harold Macmillan, who of course conveniently, face-savingly had to cite ill health as the reason for his resignation, rather than being embarrassed into resigning, because embarrassed by the affair and the lies about the affair by John Profumo. So the evidence of criminality and criminal complicity and collusion by the main Fleet Street papers is aided and abetted by the Fleet Street. It's not being treated, the wrongdoing and the criminality of a government department and the condoning of the wrongdoing and criminality by the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister. These have been aided and abetted by Fleet Street for 4 years. So what Chris Cook said in his piece, first posted on Financial Times website on dated the 30th of August 2021, that may be the case, that at the core of the civil service of the government there is paranoia about government minister or ministers getting paranoid, getting embarrassed. Anyone watching this All right, this is the piece headed UK officials are going to great lengths to keep their secret secret. And the Freedom of Information Act is being quietly gutted, that is, destroyed, disregarded, killed, and murdered by the civil servants. And it says that the core of the UK state is not just civil servants. Every part of the United Kingdom state is utterly paranoid about ministers being embarrassed. Now, to what lengths would they go? I mean, Chris Cook is not a stranger to the civil service, not a stranger to the workings of the UK state, operations of the UK state, because he has been employed as an advisor to a conservative minister called David Willits, which is the kind of evidence or fact-based traction to his piece. So he says the core of the UK state is utterly paranoid about ministers being embarrassed. Now, when the Fleet Street papers are not embarrassing the ministers, which is what has been happening for the last 4 years, the Fleet Street and the BBC and the Sky News and others, including the so-called regional media like Bristol Lies, have been going out of their way to aggravate the description, the criminally intended false description, defamatory description, untruthful description, libelous description, apply whichever part of the defamation you think is appropriate against baby angel Geronimo. The media has been aiding and abetting the defamation of the most innocent baby angel Geronimo for the last 4 years. So what Chris Cook says has not had to be kind of tested on the evidence, because the UK state has been obeyed by the mainstream so-called media. The media has been serving the lying, hiding, criminal, random murderous errand run by DEFRA or run as fronted by DEFRA against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo. So who are the people that have been campaigning for the last 4 years or have been supporting the campaign for justice for the baby angel Geronimo against the criminals plotting and perpetrating the lies against baby angel Geronimo for the last 4 years? Who have been the people who have been opposing, in principle and in legal, lawful ways, the serial incidents of criminally conceived falsehood and untruth against baby angel Geronimo for the last 4 years? Who are the campaigners? Who have been the campaigners? And who have been the campaigners for justice for baby angel Geronimo using the existing available options to challenge the criminality coming being promoted by part of the UK state, let's say, or parts of the UK state, to use the phrase in the Chris Cook piece. Who are the campaigners? And in terms of the public records of the campaign, or the fact of the campaign, or the impact of the campaign, what media outlet in the UK or internationally has carried any reports about the fact of the campaign, about the basis, the evidence of the campaign, and on what date or dates? Who are the people who have been campaigning for baby angel Geronimo? Who have been the people campaigning for justice for baby angel Geronimo, who has, in human terms, not been speaking verbally as humans? But the more kind of human beings from any part of the world became aware of the baby angel Geronimo, his innocence, and his magnificent health, the more universal, spontaneous sense of outrage was felt by all the genuine supporters for justice for the innocent baby angel Geronimo. So how many British newspapers or news outlets, Fleet Street, bothered to contact the supporters for justice for baby angel Geronimo? How many? The only one so far that actually has carried anything about baby angel Geronimo's original breeder mom in New Zealand has been the Times newspaper, as far as we can see. And although the innocent, absolutely universally innocent, and in perfect health baby angel Geronimo has been silent in human terms, in human linguistic, superficial linguistic terms, the way that his breeder mom, Leonie Walker, described baby angel Geronimo, it superseded and surpassed any apparent barrier. She expressed deepest imaginable sorrow as she recalled baby angel Geronimo's departure, leaving. So if the Times could reach or get hold of Leonie Walker, all the other Fleet Street outlets could have done if they wanted. But there is no evidence that they did. As one of the given about the British Constitution says, for centuries there have been no real kind of political opposition to the regimes. As I said yesterday, the only one was 1381, Wat Tyler, which really didn't last. And the Manchester, the Levellers revolt also petered off, went off. The nearest kind of opposition to the persecution of the state or by the state took place in the early 1980s, 200 years since Peterloo. But that series of confrontations between the mine workers and the police, while Margaret Thatcher was at the height of her fascistic kind of incumbents, that series did not tell the truth to the public about the role of the actual persecution by the state and the resistance, the mine workers. The media, so-called the Fleet Street, took the same criminal complicity role against the mine workers that it has played now against the baby angel Geronimo. So the question is, who are the people who have been actually campaigning against the persecution by DEFRA or the policy of persecution by DEFRA and the active condoning of the persecution by Boris Johnson and the active collusion by the murderer, the political murderer of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer? Who are the people that have actually really noticed the combination of all these and have taken the really necessary definitive stand to defend the baby angel Geronimo against all these evil elements and factors and the evil plot against the baby angel Geronimo? Who are the people? Does anyone know? Is there anyone viewing this? Or is there anyone known to anyone viewing this? Is there anyone at all that anywhere in the UK or in any part of the UK state or kind of society, has anyone or have more than one person being fully aware of the intentional persecution targeted at baby angel Geronimo? Have they, or has he or she, or have they, more than one person, taken the necessary public stance and stand in solidarity, in defense, to protect baby angel Geronimo? Who are they? If there is anyone who has done the stand, and in all these, throughout all these, we are assuming and we are operating in terms of assumption in the narrative that, of course, Helen MacDonald, Geronimo's mom, has maintained the communications and they maintained the stance against Defra's plot against baby angel Geronimo, and against the science, against the evidence that Defra has been kind of involved in violating the science, violating the evidence, violating the process, violating the law. So we don't have to refer to Helen MacDonald. That goes without saying. We are talking about the people outside of baby angel Geronimo's home in South Gloucestershire. Who are the people? When I say that, we don't disregard the various photographs that have been published in the so-called media about individual human beings holding placards at the farm, near baby angel Geronimo, and near Helen MacDonald herself. We are not disregarding those photographs. Remember, what we are talking about is real campaign to stop the planned criminal attacks that have been plotted for years against baby angel Geronimo. We are talking about stopping. To what extent has any action been taken to stop any of the plotted attacks against baby angel Geronimo? What steps have been taken? Or if one major step, what major step has been taken to stop? Because our campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo is packed with all the components of evidence, of facts, verifiable independently, objectively, internationally, locally, nationally. Our campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo is a moral campaign. Our campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo is a universally understood, understandable, ethical campaign. Our campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo is a truthful campaign, as truthful as truthfulness is perceived, understood, acknowledged by all the unbiased, ethical, morally motivated participants in an supporters of the campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo. Our campaign is in solidarity. We are human beings who have committed ourselves to total solidarity with the innocent baby angel Geronimo. As far as human verbalizing in human language is concerned, this is the expression of the deeper sense of solidarity which ordinary human language doesn't have any vocabulary for. But we can say that we are totally committed, dedicated to the cause for justice for and by baby angel Geronimo. We said to baby angel Geronimo, we are as much empathetic, as much sympathetic, as much in total, overwhelmingly total solidarity with you as it is humanly possible for us to express, and as it is spiritually possible for us to imply, because we are communicating to baby angel Sir Geronimo spiritually, ethically, morally. And we are relying on all the innocence that are provided in all the spheres of the universe. And we are linking our commitment, our support, our total rejection of the criminals in every respect, in every description, at every level, in our support for the totally, universally, absolutely innocent baby angel Geronimo. Baby angel Geronimo is without malice, without malicious object or intent. Baby angel Geronimo is the opposite of malice, the opposite of criminality, the opposite of spite, the opposite of hatred, the opposite of intolerance. Baby angel Geronimo is a gift, a blessing of the universe, universal power or powers that are behind the creation and the presentation and the preservation of innocence. So if the power or powers of the universe and the creation could kind of design for human, because of the limitation of human beings in perceiving phenomena and concepts that are beyond the physical, if nature could produce an image, a personality, containing all that innocence, in context, we say, they would do that by making human beings Look at baby angel Geronimo. So what we have here in part one of the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, people who are kind of conditioned into thinking of British press as being of a particularly high standard. This is the Times that in terms of temporal reference, in terms of time, probably the oldest one, the title, that can be called an example of Fleet Street, or probably the example of Fleet Street. And it is carrying today, Saturday, the 11th of September, it is carrying Johnson set out vision for Britain as he aims to beat Margaret Thatcher's 11 years. Now that is horrifying and horrible prospect, but that is what the Times is running the headline, promoting. There is no translation. There is no translation from one human language to another that can convey the sense of anger and outrage against even one single insertion of a claim against the baby angel Geronimo. Now here is a piece in the Times on page 10. I'm diverting from the theme of justice for the baby angel Geronimo. This is about the Metropolitan Police Chief Cressida Dick. And the Times kind of nonchalantly, without any kind of excitement, runs a piece on page 10, not on the front page, not on page 2 or 3 or 4, page 10, 2-column headline or heading. The Metropolitan Police Chief stays in her job until 2024. Now, this is despite the fact that the likes of the Daily Mail yesterday ran kind of extensive content against Cressida Dick being allowed another term. But this particular paragraph is absolutely offensive to all genuine supporters of proper, democratic, accountable, truthful, and honest policing. This one by John Simpson, crime correspondent, reads the first paragraph. Britain's top police officer is to remain at the head of Scotland Yard until 2024, despite concerns over her record on violence in the capital. Now that phrase, violence in the capital, is absolutely wrong. It's untruthful and it's not fact. Concerns, as repeatedly kind of printed by the Daily Mail, have been about the Metropolitan Police's racism and the Metropolitan Police's corruption. That is not about just violence and crime. I mean, those are kind of ordinary words and phrases. Of course, the police are supposed to be dealing with crime and violence, but that's not going to be sellable as an idea for basing a claim for the removal of Cressida Dick? Because there is not a single police force in existence in any part of Little England or in the rest of the UK, including Scotland, in Wales or Northern Ireland. There is not one single police force that is actually delivering anything like satisfactory level of service when it comes to crime. In fact, the last decade, if not longer, have witnessed various police forces, including the London Metropolitan Police, which is completely misleadingly still called Scotland Yard. The Metropolitan Police is the police force which has got the largest number of people called police staff, police employees, that has been failing. The largest number failing in its duties to combat or deal with the largest numbers of crimes. And as we have exclusively been saying, the policing, as is known in terms of the bureaucracy, the policing was established more than 100 years ago. And in those years, the UK policing has remained completely out of accountability. There is no democratic, evidential, ethical transparency, accountability by the police. And it's not just on one day's kind of data. It's every day. And the other thing is that the police have generally been allowed to disappear from the streets of the country. There was a time when uniformed police, because it's the uniform that actually identifies them so people can recognize who they're looking at. The uniformed police are no longer to be seen. So we go back to the behavior of the media and behavior of the houses of parliament in colluding with and allowing the criminality perpetrated for 4 years now by DEFRA and condoned by number 10 Downing Street for as long. And we see that there is no reference. There is no reference in the media to what Chris Cook says, the paranoia about ministers being embarrassed. Because Chris Cook was worked within the civil service, so-called, or Whitehall, while he was working as an advisor to David Willits. He knows how the inside of the UK state operates. And he has found, during his period as David Willits' advisor, enough evidence for him to write the piece that he has written in the Financial Times, that the central government employees, which is what the reference to Whitehall refers to, central government employees in Britain, in the UK state, are breaking the law, intentionally breaking the law, And they're lying because, as Mr. Justice Charles said in the piece that, in the judgment, in the ruling that Chris Cook refers to in his Financial Times piece, the 2015 piece that the tribunal judge, Mr. Justice Charles, that the standard of evidence that the two central government employees gave to the court, to the tribunal, was below the standard. That is, they broke the standard, they lied, they misled, they fabricated. So to paraphrase the rest of the piece by Chris Cook, central government departments are lying, and they're doing so even before baby angel Geronimo arrived in the UK in 2017. Because that condemnation of the behavior, the dishonest behavior of the government department employees, by the condemnation by the tribunal judge, Mr. Justice Charles, was about the original application for freedom of information disclosure, filed in 2010 or thereabouts. And it took all of 5 years before the tribunal judge was able to give an opinion. And it took another 6 years before that request was included in the contextual judgment and opinion about the dishonesty by the UK state, as asserted by Chris Cook in his 30th of August 2021 piece in the Financial Times. Well, the Financial Times printed it on the 31st of August, but Chris Cook posted the same piece online on the 30th of August, the day before. So, although we have been commenting on the Chris Cook piece for several days now, more than a week now, there is no evidence of the same corruption and the same criminality and the same nervousness about protecting ministers from being embarrassed. There has been no communication or content that we have seen or we have been able to spot in any of the Fleet Street papers. Now, what the piece about the Times says about Johnson plotting to stay in the post of Prime Minister for another decade, let's look at the actual copy further down. And he's saying, the Times piece is saying, the Times piece is byline to the politics editor of the Times and the policy editor of the Times, Stephen Swinford and Oliver Wright, and they say that Johnson said he was determined to address the catastrophic economic mistakes of the past 40 years and use Brexit to rectify inequalities across the country. Setting out his pitch for the 2024 election for the first time, Johnson said voters would be able to see his great project of leveling up, making progress across Britain. it's going to take a while. It's going to take 10 years. Now, there is, of course, not going to be any reference to the criminal acts by the state and the criminal behavior of Boris Johnson himself, lying for the last 40 years. So, let's look at the entry, Wikipedia entry on Boris Johnson. So it says that he's Wikipedia entry he was born in 1964, it says, in Manhattan, New York, USA. And his father was 23 at the time, age 23, Stanley Johnson. And his mother was 22-year-old Charlotte Fawcett. So Johnson was born in June 1964. And he's entered here in September 1987. Johnson and Mostyn Owen were married in West Felton, Shropshire. And it says that he got his started work as a graduate trainee at the Times in late 1987. And the next sentence says, scandal erupted when Johnson wrote an article on the archaeological discovery of King Edward II's palace for the newspaper, having invented a quote for the article, which he falsely attributed to the historian Colin Lucas, his godfather. After the editor of the Times Charles Wilson, learned of the matter, he dismissed Johnson. And then the paragraph doesn't say anything in between before saying Johnson secured employment on the leader writing desk of the Daily Telegraph, having met its editor Max Hastings during his Oxford Union presidency. In early 1989, that is 2 years later, 2 years after he started working for the Times in 1987, Johnson was appointed to the newspaper's Brussels bureau to report on the European Commission, remaining in the post until 1994. A strong critic of the integrationist Commission President Jacques Delors. He established himself as, that is, Johnson established himself as one of the cities, that is, Brussels, Eurosceptic journalists. He wrote articles about Euro myths, such as the European Union wanting to ban prawn cocktail, crisps, and British sausages, and standardized condom sizes because Italians had smaller whatever. Many of his fellow journalists there were critical of his articles, opining they often contained lies designed to discredit the Commission. The Europhile conservative politician Chris Patten later stated at the time Johnson was one of the greatest exponents of fake journalism. Now, about the dishonesty and lying by Boris Johnson, nobody viewing this needs to rely on what we are saying. You can independently check published and publicly accessible sources, and you will find literally hundreds of examples of people who are very familiar with Boris Johnson's career condemning him for his lying. And others have condemned him for his incompetence and unfitness for purpose. And the most significant person who has done that one is, of course, his very close colleague in leaving the European Union, Dominic Cummings. So all that adds up to the fact that the Times is really being stupid. I say that the Times is being stupid to say that Johnson is going to be there as Prime Minister for 10 years. It would be very, very difficult to sustain that kind of idiotic statement. And there is no evidence that he is fit for purpose. The 4 years of persistent lying, criminal plotting, and criminal conspiracy, and criminal lawbreaking, and criminal violations of the rights of the innocent baby angel Geronimo, they cannot have been done in secret. Many people in the House of Commons, many people in the House of Peers, and many people outside of Parliament, many people in Fleet Street have known the very grave implications of a government department openly plotting criminal attacks on a most innocent target. And they have been silent. So the question again, who are the people that have actually been in any credible position, any material position, who have had regular access to baby angel Geronimo in the past 4 years? Who are the people who have been in a position Who are the people that have actually been privy to, have had access to the evidence of day-to-day evidence of day-to-day health of the baby angel Geronimo in the last 4 years? And what has been their level of dedication? Who are the people that have actually given support to physically defend baby angel Geronimo against the physical plots and conspiracies and criminal plots and conspiracies against baby angel Geronimo? And what have they done to defend baby angel Geronimo? If they have not done anything to defend, to stop the DEFRA criminality, why have they not done that? How many people who have known about baby angel Geronimo being the target of the corrupt criminal plots by the particular criminally active part of the UK state in this context, what has been their awareness, knowledge of, or connections in the last 4 years? With how many elements in DEFRA itself, the DEFRA HQ? How many campaigns in the last 4 years have these people claiming to be genuine supporters of the baby angel Geronimo, how many campaigns have they been involved in, and where, and what aspects of the department of DEFRA that has been persistently engaged in the serial lies and lying against baby angel Geronimo? There is no evidence in the opinion pieces in the Fleet Street papers or the opinion parts of the television counterparts that actually substantiate any assertion that the UK state is in any way democratic, in any way accountable for the people in this country, not internationally. Now, here are the contradictory positions peddled about Boris Johnson by the Times today and the Telegraph today. Now, the Times says, of course, that Johnson is eyeing another 10 years. Okay? And the Telegraph, which is not the Telegraph in our assessment of its role, we call it the daily bribing Boris graph. And its opinion, contained in a special report by Ben Riley Smith, political editor, is headed, Johnson has won his tax battle in Westminster. Yes, but he could lose the war as public unrest starts. That's what he's saying. And our calculation is that Johnson is not going to be able to survive unrest in the country. It is quite possible that Johnson would be out of the post much sooner than 10 years. We are not having to read the actual contents in the daily bribing Boris Johnson graph. It is talking about the tax rise and the what is happening on the front page of the Telegraph today, the daily bribing Boris Johnson graph. Is that the national insurance tax that Boris Johnson has won the battle over, that tax may be in the pipeline, let's say, according to that particular legislation, but it's not going to be reaching the local councils, because the local councils across England and Wales and the rest of the UK, local councils are funded by the central government. And there is a series of established lying routines that actually operate between the local electors and the local councils, which are essentially corrupt cabals, and between local council corrupt cabals and the central government. There are two things there. The regular routine bids for funding that are submitted by the local councils to central government department responsible for funding and through the various departments are affected by the level of credibility that is allowed to local councils in justifying the amounts they bid for. And the justifying process of the amounts bid for depend on the demonstrable evidence on the part of the local councils that they are hard up, they are short of money. And this helps, or this is helped, if crime and vulnerability and so on can be cited by the given local council as being the areas of their core service which they are being challenged on facing because they have got inadequate sums of money. This is something that, well, the last 60 years, let's say. Well, 60 years, 65 to 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015. That is 50 years. So 55 years, let's say, is the creation of the councils in the current kind of arrangements. So let's say 50 to 60 years. The local councils that are elected by the local electors are not accountable to the local electors. And this is something that actually is the proof that democracy in Britain is dead. As if such proof didn't exist, the silence of Fleet Street, the silence of the elected members of parliament and the corruptly appointed members of the House of Peers the silence of the members of parliament and the members of the House of Peers on the 4-year-long criminality perpetrated by DEFRA against baby angel Geronimo shows that democracy is dead and this is a dark land. So when they say that they are the voice or the voices of the people, both the Daily Mail and the Daily Scum, the Sun, do that by basing their claim and relying on their content of their kind of so-called journalism. And this collection of the contents of the so-called journalism is completely corrupt. It's not about the behavior of the government in relation to the duties owed to the people, and it's not about the accountability, and it's not about the impact of the lying due to lack of accountability and due to complicity by the media with the state. How is that happening? Because as in the case of the Daily Mail today, they're running this absolutely empty, stupid piece by Guy Adams and Richard Kay. This is a gossip column. It's complete, absolute rubbish. It makes no sense. And the same thing with the piece by John Humphreys about Pinocchio, Boris Johnson. Now, repeatedly, the Daily Mail publishes diversionary pieces about the sick state of the NHS. It doesn't actually talk about the lack of accountability in the NHS in the real sense. And it doesn't talk about the discrimination, the corruption, the abuse on all levels that the NHS operates on with. And there has been never a piece in the Daily Mail or the Sun or Scum or the Daily bribing Boris Johnson graph or in the Times looking into the behavior of the government departments. And the same applies, nothing that actually investigates the corrupt and criminally operated bureaucracy called the judiciary. One of the social media posts in the last few weeks has said or observed, it's a short kind of statement either on Facebook or Twitter, probably Facebook, saying words to the effect that if a newspaper, by that the poster, the author of the post must have meant one in Clear Street, carried out an investigation into the behavior of DEFRA against baby angel Geronimo, it could be a brilliant scoop, words to that effect. Well, indeed, as was the scoop that was created, done, conducted by the late Harry Evans into the behavior of the British company distillers, which actually sold the German product and which destroyed the lives of thousands of victims of the drug that the distillers sold. This remains to this day the investigation by any Fleet Street newspaper into anything serious. And as you said earlier, there has been no investigation into government, and there has been no investigation by any newspapers into Profumo scandal. And that Profumo fell because of his own lying in the House of Commons, who just happened to be kind of exposed as a lie as a result of an investigation conducted by the police, not because of his lying. The police investigation into John Profumo wasn't a voluntary, spontaneous action by the police. Remember that. It came about as a result of a circular series of other related things, including the framing of a man called Stephen Ward. And who was Stephen Ward as contained in this entry in the Wikipedia? Well, Stephen Ward died on August the 3rd, 1963. So he was born in October 1912. He was an English osteopath and artist who was one of the central figures in the 1963 Profumo cause of death, Profumo scandal. The cause of death was barbiturates poisoning. And Stephen Ward Stephen Ward was a victim of a political act of revenge. And this is according to Richard Davenport Hines. And he was living with Christine Keeler. And Mandy Rice Davis also lived with him. And the fact that they contributed to the household expenditure was misused, and Ward was prosecuted for living off immoral earnings by Christian Keeler and Mandy Rice Davis. And since Stephen Ward's death, which was murder by the state, according to his friends and people who knew, Fleet Street has not talked about Stephen Ward in the context of the framing and the targeting by the state of an innocent person. So the targeting of baby angel Geronimo by DEFRA or by DEFRA by the UK state is political, is not factual, it's not scientific, it's not evidential, and it's absolutely not moral or legal. It's illegal. Every aspect of it is wrong. And there is this similar to the bribing Boris Johnson graph piece by the political editor, that the national income tax rise, Johnson may have averted a rebellion, but his MPs are seething. Now, the MPs are seething not for justice. Because if MPs were motivated by any zeal for justice for the innocent baby angel Geronimo, they would have made a point over the last 4 years at least that this conspiracy, criminality has been targeted at the innocent, absolutely innocent baby angel Geronimo. But not a single MP has made any headline, let alone any intervention, any sustained intervention on behalf of the absolutely innocent baby angel Geronimo in the last 4 years. And after the weeks of exaggerated coverage by Fleet Street about Afghanistan and the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, Fleet Street has reverted to the criminally in denial kind of indulgence about domestic absurdities, not domestic injustices. Remember the distinction. And this is a typical piece about false seriousness. This is a piece by this character called Paul Waugh. Paul Waugh, W-A-U-G-H. It is saying, what is it saying? He's saying about the Afghanistan issue, let's see what he's saying. He's saying on page 29, this Paul Waugh, or Waugh, how you pronounce it. He's described as the executive politics editor at Huffington Post UK. And he's highlighting Joe Biden seems driven by his public's Afghanistan fatigue on overseas operations. And Waugh is saying the West's policy vacuum only aids terrorists. And he's talking about the Twin Towers, etc., etc. This is the 11th of September. 20 years ago, this was the date when the terrorist attack in New York apparently took place. I say apparently because there are increasing public claims made by various sources and various people that it was not how it was reported. It wasn't done by the people of Afghanistan or people of Iraq or whatever, but it was actually funded by the Saudi government. That is one. And the other is that it was done by the American government. And the other is that one of the towers that fell was actually exploded. The explosion took place within it, inside it, not coming from outside by a plane. Having said all of that, Paul Waugh, who is an absolutely opportunistic, corrupt careerist, he's saying when the Twin Towers were attacked on 11 September 2001, staff at the Spectator crammed into the editor's office to watch the events unfold on television. Boris Johnson, the editor, a newly elected MP for Henley, was not present. When he turned up, he inquired, "I say, what's going on?" On being told what was going on, Johnson is said to have replied, "Golly." Yards away on the same street in Bloomsbury in central London was the office of a young barrister called Keir Starmer. The radical Doughty Street chambers he had helped create took on difficult causes, often for no fee. Now, this is a plug for Starmer that we shall come to later. But Starmer was 5,000 miles away at a human rights conference in the Cayman Islands, reacting with horror to the footage from New York. The symposium issued a statement condemning the barbarous acts that have outraged the conscience of all people. Today, as the two men mark the 20th anniversary of 9/11, they will pay tribute to all those who lost their lives and their bereaved families. Yet, aside from the personal memories, the political impact of the atrocity and the subsequent war on terror is still being played out. The chaotic Western withdrawal from Afghanistan has prompted the, I'll read that again because there is a unintended addition of D there. The chaotic Western withdrawal from Afghanistan has prompted real unease within both the Tory and Labour parties, not least as the unity that existed in the wake of the Al-Qaeda attacks has been largely shattered within the US and internationally. Polarized politics on both sides of the Atlantic, plus a fracturing of Western resolve, is the dominant mood now. As I said, this Paul Waugh is a corrupt individual, but he's a typical crook from the kind of periphery of Fleet Street. This is the Huffington Post. Is a periphery part of. Now, Starmer was not 5,000 miles away at a human rights conference in the Cayman Islands. I mean, the fact that it was in Cayman Islands gives the game away. It's a complete lie. Cayman Islands is not known for championing human rights, and nor is Starmer. And the words that Paul Waugh attributes to Starmer as a supposed contrast to Boris Johnson's ignorance are false as well. Often for no fees is a lie because, as we said in previous editions, Keir Starmer only took the case of the two persons that had been sued in defamation by the multi-billionaire McDonald's company over a leaflet about the McDonald's selling dangerous animal food, etc., etc. Starmer took on that pro bono, that is unpaid advisor or legal advisor post, only for a short time and only for the duration of the work needed to create him as a barrister helping them. And then he dropped them. Starmer dropped the defendants in the libel case, in the defamation case brought against them, two campaigners, by McDonald's. And he never touched them again, never, as far as publicly accessible, Starmer never held them again. This is the case, the court case called McLibel. The McLibel case from memory, I can say it's one of the defendants was Helen Steele. And let's find out if her co-defendants are mentioned. Okay, it's called the McLibel case, and it's McDonald's Corporation versus Steele and Morris. It is a case in 1997. That was, 4 years before 9/11. And it was the original case lasted about 10 years. And it was the longest running libel case in English legal history. We shall come to all of those later in due course, not necessarily later parts of this particular edition of the Justice for Baby Angel Geronimo edition of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. And the McDonald's instituted the defamation against Helen Steele and her co-campaigner Morris based on the contents of the fact and the contents of the particular leaflet, one leaflet. They said the campaigners published the leaflet, distributed the leaflet, which was titled "What's Wrong with McDonald's?" Now, as a case concerning all aspects of big business affecting society and people and people's health, etc., and the legal profession, the role of the corrupt bureaucracy called the judiciary in England, this case had plenty of relevance and importance and impact, and yet Fleet Street has not touched it, despite the fact that there was a historic length, where 10 years this ran for. Fleet Street has not touched it. Even the BBC has not really touched it. And so to say that Keir Starmer is described in this piece by Paul O. The radical Doughty Street chambers he had helped create took on difficult causes, often for no fee. That is a lie. There exists no chambers, that is the licensed law trading barristers, nor any counterpart equivalent in the licensed law trading court solicitors, nor indeed in the third tier, which is the licensed law trading legal executives. There is no chamber or office or group or business or practice anywhere in the United Kingdom that does cases for no fee. The phrase is pro bono, no fees. And for Paul Waugh to say that in a duplicitous way, praising the Doughty Street chambers as taking cases for no fee, and by implication, giving credit to Keir Starmer, is doubly criminal and corrupt. So what we mean by diagnosis? We are doing the diagnosis as part of the campaign for justice for baby angel Geronimo. So when the likes of Starmer went public and condoned the criminal plot against the innocent baby angel Geronimo, there is no shred of any evidence to base this kind of pro bono commitment by Starmer that Paul Waugh, the liar, credits him. So when anyone really determined to do campaigning legal action for baby angel Geronimo, when I raise that question, I do that in the knowledge of all these crimes and criminal opportunism by licensed law traders. And the fact that that case, defamation case, brought by McLibel, who could fund a libel action for 100 years, was dragged on for 10 years without the courts telling the truth, recognizing the truth, and acquitting Helen Steele and her colleague Morris. It shows that there is no criminal or civil court system where the innocent can get any justice. For the rich and the powerful, the McLibel is rich, and DEFRA, the government department, is powerful. So when we say that is the evidence that shows that the legal option is not equally available or available at all to seek justice for baby angel Geronimo. We go into the mode of campaigning law. And that's what I have been outlining for the last few weeks. That the court system should be flooded with claims against DEFRA. The court system should be flooded with claims against the government and claims for the baby angel Geronimo. And that can be done in a campaigning way, which doesn't take hundreds of thousands of pounds. It has to be a determined number of people or individual that can pay the fee, few £100 at county court level. And for the gravity of the wrongdoing to be the focus or in the focus, all that is needed is one particular powerfully argued case to be filed in a county court. What do I mean? I mean that the coverage of the county court's corruption and criminality and obstruction, the coverage is the real outcome. And you can continue doing that. As I said, there has been no revolutions or revolutionary movement in physical terms since the levelers, and most certainly not since the mine workers were attacked by Margaret Thatcher and her forces. And you cannot find similar numbers of people physically engaging against DEFRA in that way. So what you do is create the nearest legal procedural equivalent to mass movement that in fact in principle supports and represents the views in support and solidarity of baby angel Geronimo. Thousands of people can join. Thousands of people can make public the fact of the court case and cases. So what we shall do is bring this particular edition to an end, and we shall continue in the next edition whenever logistically we can do that. So this is 18 minutes. This is 13:42 hours UK time, that is 12:42 GMT on Saturday, the 11th of September, 2021.